First, before I get started, I just want to say, yes, this is a temporary new image I'm using for those of you who can't see this. I decided to be a little festive for Advent and Christmas, and this image will go back to the old one or be replaced with something entirely new. Who knows? In the, near future. Back, when the liturgical calendar changes again. Anyway, it is rare that I get to bring you some good news, but I have that privilege today. No, it's not about a change in who occupies what ecclesial post in Vatican City, and it's not about anything like that. I came across another good bishop, one who does right things for the public, and he's an American, sort of. One of the members of the hierarchy has called for a return to the Vetus Ordo, that is, for a return to the traditional Latin rite of the Mass, and he's doing so openly with a promise of more things to come from him in the future. Some of you will say, why does that make him a better bishop? And it's simple. So very few members of the hierarchy are willing to admit that the liturgical changes made in the aftermath of the Second Vatican Council are at the root of much of the situation in the Church today. It's not its primary cause. That would be modernism and the movement by the modernists to have the Church adopt the values of Caesar. But one of the tenets of the Catholic faith is lex orandi, lex credendi, which transliterates to the law of what is prayed is the law of what is believed. But more simply, how we pray is how we live. At the root of much of the state of the Church is the influence of our worship and what it has had on our daily lives as Catholics. This bishop understands that and is joining the call for a restoration of tradition in the Church. First, from the USCCB, which defines the core concept more closely for us. Yes, the USCCB provides something useful and not completely marinated in modernism. Go figure. Quote, lex orandi, lex credendi has become something of a tenet of liturgical theology, especially in the years since the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. Literally translated, it means the law of prayer is the law of belief. This axiom is an adaptation of words of Prosper of Aquitaine, a 5th century Christian writer and contemporary of St. Augustine. The original version of the phrase, ut legem credendi lex statuat supplicandi, that the law of praying establishes the law of believing, highlighted the understanding that the Church's teaching, lex credendi, is articulated and made manifest in the celebration of the liturgy and prayer, lex orandi. End quote. The Church's teaching is made manifest in the liturgy. This should be, obvious, but given that it is practically an accepted fact by anyone who's traditionally minded that many, if not most, Novus Ordo Masses are lacking reverence, and that this has had an impact on the everyday lives of Catholics, this is anything but obvious to a great many priests and prelates of the Church. Why? I haven't any idea, unless they don't share what we all profess at the Easter liturgy, if they profess it with us at all. Only God knows for sure, but as our blessed Lord says, by their fruits ye shall know them. Into this rather endless discussion that has taken place since the Council steps in the bishop I mentioned at the start of this, Swiss Nuncio Thomas Gullikson. Bishop Gullikson is no stranger to saying what needs to be said without regard to what people might think about it. For example, back in January, my favorite Catholic news source for reading stories from the ape of the church perspective, which I usually do on my live streams, took umbrage with Bishop Gullikson's call for returning to reading the fathers and doctors of the church, to stick to previously approved theologians and great minds in this time, when trying to learn what the church has always taught can be tricky. To Novena News we go for that. Quote, what is of great concern in Gullikson's blog entry is the idea that the Church has always advised that we have recourse to approved authors. They then quote him directly. With that expression, of course, we mean first and foremost the great fathers and doctors of the Church, but also a whole series of saintly men and women who have faithfully held to the tradition, as well as those who continue to do so in our day, the nuncio explained. The idea of recourse to approved authors from the past and to those who faithfully adhere in their teaching and preaching to that tradition is no more than common sense. Or should I say, wisdom, Gullikson continued. Reserving the teaching and preaching office to those in holy orders was always a reminder that we live not so much from erudition or eloquence as we do from grace, the nuncio said. End quote. Yeah, some people didn't like that, but what can you do? Personally, I think he's right. After all, the surest way to find your footing in these uncertain times in the Church is to seek out the clarity of past days, where the great minds of the Church spoke and wrote with such clarity that there was little doubt as to what was meant and what it would mean for us in our everyday lives. Such honesty is lacking these days, as much of what we hear doesn't square with what came before. But Bishop Gullickson made a statement about the Mass and the need to restore the Latin Mass on his blog last week, and it's taken some time to make the rounds and gain the attention it deserves. A link to it is on my sources blog at returntotradition.org. Seek it out and follow him if you feel so inclined. There, the bishop is often found doing what most blog writers do from time to time, expressing his thoughts. It's a bit different when it's a bishop doing it, though. Quoting from his short blog post, which is a review of the latest book by Dr. Kwasniewski. Quote, despite my own firm conviction that the only future for the Church is in its recovery of integral Catholic worship, according to the Vetus Ordo, I needed this push from Dr. Kwasniewski to recast the urgency aspect of stepping back from the Novus Ordo, especially when it comes to Eucharistic reverence. For now, I would encourage readers to take advantage of the sale price, as the book is so well formulated on certain points that it is a must. Believe it or not, lay people are better off than clergy when it comes to options for facing the issue of expressing true reverence with respect to conscience. I will need some time yet to be able to work out the implications for myself as a retired member of the hierarchy. Stay tuned for more thoughts from the retiree in 2021. End quote. I know that some will bristle at this, citing the Unicorn Novus Ordo as being truly reverent. I have seen exactly one of these in my life, and it was said by the Dominicans in Portland, Oregon, and they're well known in that parish for saying the Dominican traditional Latin Mass every Sunday as well, so there you go. The fruits of the new Mass are self-evident. When asked, only 30% of Catholics stated that they believed that our Lord was truly present in the Eucharist, with the remainder saying that they believed the most blessed sacrament of the altar to be merely a symbol. The way the Eucharist is handled increasingly by laymen and with little recognition of what the host truly is metaphysically underscores this, reinforces this, teaches this in practice. This is to say nothing of how little confession is offered in most parishes, how when making use of that sacrament of penance, what is confessed is downplayed in its gravity, treating what is mortal as a venial matter instead. We've all heard the stories, so they're not really worth going into here. My point is this, that it is breathtakingly refreshing to hear a bishop say this. It is little wonder that he is retiring as a nuncio and will be speaking more freely after his active and regular service to the Church has been fulfilled. I, for one, will be watching him with hope, and I hope to add him to the roster of the better bishops in service to Christ and his flock in the Church. I know he's retired, or will be, meaning he is going to have limited influence in things going forward, but that's actually fine. He was speaking openly before retiring. He offered a response to Francis's program for the Church that raised eyebrows, saying that it was reminiscent of the son of perdition. Consider that for a moment. That's a forthright take with little ambiguity contained therein. This comes by the way as Pope Francis gives a homily telling the new crop of cardinals to reject apathy and indifference, which is a right and just thing to tell them. Maybe Bishop Gullickson agrees with him on that much, and is and has been answering that call. It takes a certain amount of courage for a prelate to admit that the Novus Ordo Missae has been a failure for the Church, and that the Latin Mass should be restored to its rightful place, and he absolutely is aware of how hard that would be, and what the effect might look like in practice if that is ever done. It isn't rocket science to say that the solution would be even more disruptive than what it seeks to solve, but at this point, if 70% of Catholics don't affirm the real presence in the Eucharist, as numerous examinations have attested, then this must be addressed. And liturgy is central to how that came to pass. It's not a popular thing to say, and I'm not telling anyone who attends the Novus Ordo that they are somehow at fault for attending that Mass. I have never done that, and I will not start now. I am merely saying that at the core of the present state of life in the Church is the situation with the liturgy, and its effects on how we live as Catholics. Lex orandi credendi. It is real, much more real than we want to admit, and it starts at the Mass, which our lives as Catholics should revolve around. I've included a link to the bishop's short post in my show notes for today, and from there you can explore his blog more. Give him a follow if you can. He doesn't post every day, at least for now, because, he's probably pretty busy with the duties of his office, but those days are coming to a close if they haven't already, due to his retirement, and it being the start of a new liturgical year. I am curious what you think about this. If he does offer to add his thoughts to the Vatican II discussion between Vigano, the bishop from Kazakhstan, and others, I'll include his writings in that discussion as they do come up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and please pray for the Church and pray for Bishop Gullickson. Thank you for listening and for your support of this channel. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.